All right, welcome back, friends. Thank you for joining us today. We're on Tiermaker today. I decided I just don't want to make original videos anymore. I want to start reaching out. I told you all this a few videos ago. I want to start doing different things, and I thought this would be a fun first one to do. I'm rocking my O'Neill's 1916 jersey to represent my people that aren't very big fans of the British monarchy. But I decided to do the British and Scottish monarch tier list. So when I say British and Scottish, that's just referencing the Acts of Union when before the Act of Union, the royal family of Scotland was also the royal family of England. So I'm going to start actually with the current monarch of England, and that's going to be Charles III. So the way we have this set up is gonna be based is usually the S tier, the like superb, very good's A, good's B, meh is C, bad is D, uh, E is cringe, F is desolate, and boy king is boy king. Um, so I'm gonna start with Charles III. I'm gonna put him at meh. So I'm gonna put him at meh just because he's only been monarch for 3 months. And I don't want to say he's great. I don't want to say he's very good base. Again, he's only been monarch for 3 months, and I'm not gonna hold against him the things that happened back in the '90s with the whole Princess Diana incidents and everything. But I think as a king so far, he's pretty much just done the what he's supposed to. I don't want to say he's a bad king, say he's a great king. I just want to, he's meh. He's doing what the royal family's supposed to do. Now, there's two pictures for our next person, so I'm just going to choose this one because she looks very dignified in it, and that's going to be Queen Elizabeth II. Now, she's come over. She obviously just passed away, and people acted horribly, honestly, when she passed away. But I'm actually going to put her at base as satisfactory. I think she definitely is. I think she has done so much for the world in general. Her life alone is an amazing one. She was never meant to be queen. She was never meant to be in the line of succession, honestly. It was supposed to be her uncle. And she stepped into the role. She did what she had to do. She wasn't a tyrant, she was a servant. And I think she set the same pace as her father. But again, she reigned. She's the longest reigning monarch of England. Uh, King Louis XIV still has her beaten for world, but I think she definitely is up here. She will be in the future remembered as one of the greatest monarchs England had. Now, her predecessor is her father. I'm gonna put him. I'll put him very good. Again, much like his daughter, he was not supposed to be king. He was put into a very unfortunate situation because of the actions of his brother. His brother put himself before the good of England, and I know everyone has this story. They think of I'll get to that when I get to Edward. But I think he definitely was a man who was put into a situation he did not want to be in. He had his struggles, and also I think he was a strong person, especially during the Second World War. We often think about Winston Churchill during the Second World War, but it was George VI who held England together. He decided he was not going to flee England. He was going to stay. He's going to stay and help in whatever way he could his people in England. He could have been another king in exile in Canada, but he decided, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to hold my ground. Now we can get to Edward VIII. So I'm going to put him. I'll put him at cringe. I know there's this love story everyone has of Edward VIII. The beautiful Wallis Simpson and him. The British government was so rude. They didn't, love and this. No, that's not how it works, unfortunately. I know many people have this vision of the romance story, everything, but the reality is the royal family is not a fairy tale. You are, unfortunately, and again, it's not fun. And you know what, he did what he had to do to get out of it. But you are representing England as a whole. Edward almost took down the entire monarchy because of his actions. And not only that, Edward actually went to the Germans and embraced them. He embraced the Nazi party. You know, there's pictures of him at Berchtesgaden with Adolf Hitler, you know, him with Julius Streicher, the head of the German Labor Front. Like, he did everything that he could have to not help England. And not only that, he would meet with a lot of Nazi officials while he was hiding in Spain and Portugal, to the point that Winston Churchill threatened to court-martial and execute him if he did not obey the king's order to go to the Bahamas. So I'm going to put him at cringe because I don't think he deserves to be anywhere else. I don't want to call him bad because he's another one. He was only in charge for a short period. I have a video on on Edward the Eighth, which I'm kind of brutal in it, but I think it's justified. But yeah, I would not put him as one of the better ones. George the Fifth. We're gonna put George the Fifth at good. He was definitely the king England needed during World War One. There's this scene in The Crown where Philip is talking about the Tsar of Russia and Kaiser of Germany during World War One, you know, being extravagant and everything. Meanwhile, George V was quiet and kept to himself. George V, again, was like his son, George VI, and his granddaughter was not supposed to be king. His brother, Albert Victor, was supposed to be king. But Albert Victor would die of pneumonia, and he was made king. He was actually Duke of York, like his son, George VI. So he brought humility. He was very humble. He kept to himself. He didn't like to do large things. I think his primary hobby was stamp collecting. He was a family man. He was a very brash family man, but he was a family man. And he was the kind of calm that England needed. And I think his son, George VI, matched him during World War II. It's just, in World War I, and this is the only reason I don't put him at very good, the stakes were not the same in World War I as they were in World War II. World War I, England only joined because Belgium got invaded. England was never under an actual threat of invasion by the Germans, because really the Germans didn't want it. World War II, England was under a great level of invasion by the Nazis. So that's the only reason I put him at good and his son at very good. Who's next? Oh, yes. Edward the Seventh. I'm going to place Edward the Seventh at meh. Much like his namesake, Edward the Eighth, he wasn't in charge very long. I think he had 10 years. The Edwardian era is what it's called. He, much like Charles III, which I think is why they're both here, succeeded very great women. Their mothers were both very fantastic. Edward was kind of a debaucher. He was kind of, you know, he drank a lot. He whored around. He made a lot of good influence on England. You know, he created the modern British Navy that they had by the time World War I came along. But he really, you know, he helped unite the royal families of Europe. But you could also debatably say he caused World War II, because a lot of the animosity Kaiser Wilhelm II felt towards England was, yes, it was in part because of his mother, Victoria, the Princess Royale, who married Kaiser Frederick I, but it was also because of Edward the Seventh. Him and Wilhelm II had a very strained relationship. In fact, Wilhelm II, when he was a child, threatened to stab him, Edward the Seventh, at I think a funeral. I believe he threatened to stab him because Edward yelled at him. So yeah, I'm gonna put him at meh. I'm not not to downgrade him or make it like he wasn't a good ruler. It's just he was there. Can't say much. All right, where is she? Where is she? Victoria. The Irish in me wants to do bad, but I really can't do that. She's gonna have to probably go with based, sadly. I'm sorry, all my Irish viewers. I know we're probably heartbroken by that, but when you have an entire era named after you, it says a lot. Much like I said about Elizabeth, who suffered in her last few years without her consort, Victoria actually suffered her entire reign, the majority of it. Albert died very early. Prince Albert, her consort, died very early in her reign, and she had to learn how to suffer the rest of her life, especially with children she was not a fan of. It's kind of terrible to say that, but it's a reality. She was not a fan of her children, and she had to spend the rest of her life alone, pretty much. She met friends like John Brown or the Munshi. I forgot his name. Abdul, I believe, is his name. It was a struggle. She did what she could with what she had. Again, the greatest expansion of the British Empire was under her. She was the first Empress of India. She led to what we view as the imperialism of England. So she goes up there. She brought a lot to Europe. She is the grandmother of Europe. Every royal family in Europe finds root from her. So I'm going to put her here. I'll put her there. William the Third, I believe, is his title. William the Third. Give me 1 sec. I gotta double check this. I'm sorry. It's William the Fourth. William the Fourth. He was good. This is a weird situation. These next few monarchs, because this wasn't father to son or son to or father to daughter or daughter to son. This is brothers to brothers. William the Fourth was one of the children of George III. He was Queen Victoria's uncle, who had his daughter survived, would have been the successor, his daughter Charlotte. But she unfortunately did die. He was an okay king. He a lot of people say his brother was the end of the Georgian era. He really was the end of the Georgian era. He ended the anti-French era of England, because Victoria would be the one who actually brought in the alliance between France and England. So he would go good. He kept the country stable. He was a strong king, a powerful king. So he's good. He's a good guy. I like him. I don't hate him. George the Fourth. I'm gonna put him at cringe. He was very much similar to Edward the Seventh and Eighth. George the Fourth was another one of these men who waited a very long time to assume his throne. His father, George the Third, had actually been the longest reigning monarch of England at the time, and then Victoria would overtake him, and then Elizabeth would overtake her. But he would wait a very long time. He actually would bring in what was called as the Regency. This was when George III had lost his mental stability, so it was deemed he could no longer be king. But he wasn't dead, because the position of king is a lifelong one, at least in England. So he was given the Prince Regent, and that was his son George became the Prince Regent. But once he was king, he was very debauched. He was overweight. He ate a lot. He enjoyed the presence of ladies of the night, so to speak. He also married a Catholic girl in private, which, of course, would later get annulled. But he would be the person that caused the Royal Marriage Act to come to effect, saying that the monarch must approve the marriage before any proposals could happen. So I put him there. He caused a lot of strife. He only, just like Edward VII, he only served as king for about 10 years. He wasn't very long on the throne. I think he had a heart attack because he was like very overweight. His daughter was actually the one who married Prince Leopold, who would later become King Leopold, the first king of the Belgians. We're going to now go to King George III. And again, you can disagree with me. You're more than welcome to. I'm going to put George III, though, at good. I think he's a very misunderstood person, especially because American history, which I'm proud of, we paint him as a villain. I think he was actually a very good king of England. I think he cared very much for his subjects. He's actually the first actual English king of England. Before that, both of the kings had been actually born in Germany. So I think he cared deeply for his people. I think he did what he thought he was right. And he was the one who started the British Empire. Whereas, like I said before, Victoria reigned over the biggest expansion of the British Empire. It was George who actually started this expansion when the French and Indian War, or as we know it, as the Europeans know it, the 7 Years' War, enthralled Europe. He was the one who was responsible for the mass expansion of British territories and taking French territories in places like India, Africa, and even the New World, where they took many of the Western territories away from France. Now, let's get to King George II. I believe this is him. So he was George III's grandfather. He actually wasn't George III's father. He was very elderly when he took over. He was German. He spoke fluent German. I believe he spent more time in Hanover than he did in England. So a thing about these monarchs is many of them, this is the Hanoverian line, which ended with Victoria. That's when you have the saxe-coburg line / Windsor line. So Victoria, William, George, and George are all Hanoverians, whereas Elizabeth, George, Charles, Edward are all Saxe-Coburg / Windsors. He wasn't terrible. He was a good king. He was his father was the first German king, the first Hanover, and that'll bring us to him next. God, I hate these. They're so small. I believe this is him. He's another one. He was meh. He was the first Hanoverian king. The whole reason was he was the only Protestant claimant to the throne. His mother was actually the claimant to the throne as a relative of the Stuarts, but she had died, so he was the only Protestant remaining. The rest were Catholics, and the King of England is the head of the Anglican Church, so you can't really have a Catholic do it. So he was actually the second choice. That's George I. And now we're gonna begin. See, this doesn't go back far. I think we're gonna stop at Richard III or Edward I, because I'm not seeing much further back. Even though this goes really far back. I feel like we're missing kings. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, because these are the two of the same guys. So him, Mary. So Mary, I'm actually going to put at good. Mary was the one who actually created the, it's called the Acts of Union. She was the one, Mary II. This is Mary I. We'll get to her. Mary II will be the one who brings about the Acts of Union. This is the combination of England and Scotland. This is what ends her being Mary I of England, Mary II of England, and Mary the fourth of Scotland. She's the one that makes it all one united kingdom. This is when the Union Jack will finally come into the public perception under her reign. I think there's two of her too. What is this? This is so weird. They give doubles of certain monarchs. This is James. Oh God, what did I do? I lost him. Oh, there he is. That's James the First. No, James the Third, I believe he is. I'll put him there. Not really much to know about him. Charles II. I'm gonna put Charles II at bad. I'm actually gonna put all the Charles at bad. Actually, where's his dad? There he goes. Okay, so Charles II, he kind of is the one that started the Jacobite risings. That's when he kind of set off this bigger conflict between everyone. Um, it really did nothing to help England. It actually caused things like the Battle of the Boyne or Culloden, the hope to get these people put in charge. So that's why I put him here as well as both Jameses. Charles II, I mean, that's Charles II, right? No, that's Charles I. Yeah, this is Charles II. Charles I is the only king of England, at least we have, who was actually executed by Parliament. He had been reigning over England. I explained this a lot in my Oliver Cromwell series. He'd kind of been reigning as a tyrant. He dismissed Parliament, would only repeal them, bring them back when he needed money. Actually, I'm going to put him down. He's desolate. I don't like him. I really don't like him. He's an idiot. He would only bring them back when he needed money. And that kind of infuriated England. They were like, what's the point of us even existing? So I put him here. He's pretty awful. Now, his father was James I. He was good. He wasn't terrible. He did bring in a lot of the anti-Catholic laws, but he also was kind of thrown in this position. He really didn't. He was King of Scotland. He really wasn't supposed to be King of England, but with the death of Elizabeth I, he kind of got thrown into that position. And speaking of her, we're going to put her great. I think she was a great queen. I think she did a lot for England. I think, as a Catholic, I'm not a big fan, but as a historian, I can recognize she created the British Navy the way it is. She's the one who started privateering. She's the one that approved the Virginia Company, which is, honestly, if there was no Virginia Company, there'd be no America. Virginia, of course, is virgin. She was the Virgin Queen. She had no heirs or anything. Her sister, desolate. Mary I was nicknamed Bloody Mary. She had actually tried to bring Catholicism back to England in spite of her father, Henry VIII. And wasn't good. She killed many people, burned a lot of people at the stake, and she got the name Bloody Mary. So I'm going to put her desolate, tyrant. Her brother, I think that's Edward II, actually. So I'm going to put, her brother was a boy king. He was the son that Henry always wanted. Unfortunately, he did not live long. So, again, there's really not much we know about him other than that he was a boy king. But now let's go to Henry VIII. This is kind of a hard one to do. I'm just going to leave him at bad. I don't want to make him, yes, what he did to his family was awful, and, you can debatably say the Protestant Reformation was terrible, but early reign, he actually was a very influential and good king. So I'm going to leave him at bad. I'm not going to say he's cringy. He's not really cringy. He was a good warrior and everything, but I'm gonna put him at bad. His father, which I guess I'm just gonna have to use Richard for both, right? That doesn't make sense. It's so weird. It goes back to these guys because that's Henry Bolingbroke. It's weird. His father was Henry the Seventh. He was a good king. He was a good king. I'll give credit where credit's due. He was the man who defeated. Actually, that might be Edward. Who are you? This is so weird. He was the man who defeated Richard III. I'm thinking that's not even him. This is such a weird. Just to go with it. He would be the one that defeated Richard III. Who I also think it's a unfair rap. But, so he brought England back under, I guess. He also united the houses of Lancaster and York. So that's the whole War of the Roses. He ended the War of the Roses. He was himself a Lancastrian, but his wife was a Yorkist. So when they got married and had Henry, even though he started Richard III was the end of the Plantagenet Anjou line. So when Henry VIII was born, he was the first monarch that was both a York and Lancastrian, but it was under the House of Tudor instead of the House of Plantagenet or Anjou. Um, yeah, this is weird because there's so many more kings. I'm just gonna say he's Richard because it's kind of a similar picture. Richard was meh. I am of the opinion he definitely gets a bad rap. I don't think he was as bad as people made him to be. Like, sure, he probably, I'm of the opinion he wasn't responsible for the princes in the tower. That's just me personally. But yeah, I think that's pretty fair for Richard III. Edward II, that was Richard's brother's son. He was a boy king. I don't even think he served as king for a long period because Richard was regent. Yeah, this is so weird. I don't even think this guy's English. I think he's French. I think that's as far as we get in this episode, folks. Yeah, so that's what I think. So that's what I think of the monarchs listed. I wish there were more, but that's what we're working with. Thank you so much for viewing. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and comment if you did. If you have any questions or if you have any different views. Again, I'm not going to be sensitive if you disagree with me. So please like, share, and comment. If you enjoyed, please subscribe by pressing that nice little red button there in the bottom right corner. And if there's nothing else, we'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.